Your Honor, the defendant is guilty of hiding information. This is only further proof of an unethical and criminal mind. And this man's attorney, Mr. Howard Williams, was too present at the time of the murder of Ann Smith. I have the Judge, first of all, I'm going to object. Excuse me, may I finish? No, I'm going to object to this statement. Actually, Johnson, you can listen to the recording again. I had left the room before the argument that led to the murder. I'm witness to the fact that Ann Smith was still alive while I was there. That recording is useless. You say you left, but you didn't announce your presence or your exit. Now you're speaking out of assumption. You have no evidence to your silly claims. Your Honor, this man is shamefully lying because the point I have raised is inconsistent with his false account. Mr. Howard Williams, you should know I never speak without evidence. Your Honor, I would like to call my last witness. Susan Johnson was a criminal defense attorney working in Los Angeles, California. She had been practicing law for the past 8 years, and in these 8 years, she had progressed greatly in the field. Miss Johnson, your client is a prime suspect to the so-called accident at the hospital. He may not have been present at the time, but that is exactly why the patient lost his life. I would like to know how many hours does Mr. Lehman work at the hospital? The hours vary, and Mr. Wilson, your argument has no basis. My client may be a doctor, but he's no miracle worker guaranteeing his patient's recovery or life. Please, don't be ridiculous. But you do agree Dr. Lehman wasn't present at the hospital during a great span of time, correct? That is your statement, not mine. Don't put words into my mouth, Mr. Wilson. I'm not saying it was your statement. I'm asking you a question. Don't troll me, Mr. Wilson. You should know in criminal cases the burden of proving the defendant guilty is on the prosecution. You must establish the fact beyond a reasonable doubt, but you have failed miserably to prove beyond reasonable doubt that Dr. Lehman is guilty. Don't waste my time or the court's. Let's address the court. Let's not argue between the attorneys. Dr. Lehman is acquitted of all charges. Susan Johnson was known for winning her cases. Her arguments were undefeatable, and she pulled them off with great vigor. Suzanne guaranteed her clients better success rates, and when indeed she proved herself worthy, she received much recognition, a good reputation, and over the years, a lot of money. Susan's days were usually busy. She spent many hours at the office discussing and examining case files. And just like every other morning, Susan was heading out to work when she was surprised to find a small box left on her porch. To attorney Suzanne Johnson. Curiously, Suzanne took it inside and opened up the box to find another small box wrapped in gift paper and a small note attached to it. Thank you, Miss Johnson, for what you've done for us. Please accept a gift of gratitude. How sweet. Suzanne happily opened the box and took out a beautiful shining showpiece. It must have been from one of her many clients. She placed it at the center of her coffee table when suddenly she received a call from the office. Oops, I'm getting late for work. The day went by pretty busy, and by the time Suzanne returned, she was exhausted, feeling a little nauseous. She thought perhaps her blood sugar was low and poured herself a glass of juice, but for some reason, she was still feeling stuffy. Maybe I just need some shut-eye. Fortunately, the long week was over, and Suzanne had the day off tomorrow. But the next morning, she was still feeling congested. She ran a hot shower, drank hot coffee, but nothing seemed to get rid of that feeling. I hope I didn't catch the flu. I have a big case on Tuesday. Suzanne spent her day preparing for her upcoming case. There was a lot of money on the line, and after all these years, this wasn't just about the case, but it was about her reputation. Suzanne took every case that came her way as a challenge upon herself. However, the weekend went by horribly. She felt anxious and lightheaded and couldn't get any work done. The worst part was, laying down in her room didn't help either, nor did eating a good meal. Come Monday, Susan's anxiety was at its peak, but she still kept hopes up thinking she would get work done at the office. The ride to the BII Plaza, with all her car windows open, was quite relieving. "Morning, Miss Johnson." "Morning, Bella." Susan and her intern got into the elevator on their way to the 11th floor. But as the door slowly closed, Suzanne started to feel uneasy again. "Is it hot in here?" "No, Miss Johnson. Are you okay? You're sweating quite a bit." Suddenly, Suzanne's chest tightened. Everything started to look blurry. The elevator room seemed like it was caving in on her as she began to black out. "Bella, I can't breathe." As Suzanne collapsed to the floor, everyone in the elevator started to panic seeing her state. Bella immediately pressed the emergency button as she began to fan her boss. But Suzanne was now hyperventilating, her hands trembling. She wanted to ask for help, but had no energy to even move. Stop the elevator. I need to get out of here. Miss Johnson, we're almost there." Everyone at the office was bewildered seeing Bella bringing Suzanne to her office room. Suzanne immediately ran out to her balcony and took in the fresh air, staring down 11 stories beneath her, and that's when she finally felt relief again. "Miss Johnson, what happened to you? I suddenly felt like I was trapped in there." "Sounds like claustrophobia. That's strange, all of a sudden. I really don't know what's happening to me, but I really need to get some work done. Bella, bring me all the files for tomorrow's case. I'm running behind." Unfortunately, the next day, the court trial turned out to be a disaster. Suzanne wasn't able to defend her case at all. But more than she was worried about her failure, she was worried about her health. All that went in her mind as she stood there in front of the judge was when she could run out and breathe the air outside. She felt suffocated standing in the courtroom. In only the next 2 weeks, Suzanne lost 4 cases in a row. People started to rumor about her, and consequently, she lost many of her future cases in an instant. And when the unusual symptoms continued, Suzanne decided it was time she visit the doctor. "Looks like you're having symptoms of stress and anxiety. Perhaps you need to take a break and relax." But staying at home didn't help either. Suzanne had been unable to sleep in the past 3 weeks. Every time she laid down, she could literally see the walls caving in on her. She felt like she was going to be squeezed in there, but at the same time she felt frozen. She couldn't move a limb. She spent her nights feeling paralyzed. Until eventually, Suzanne couldn't bear it and started sleeping out on her balcony. And soon enough, the claustrophobia became so extreme that she couldn't even sit in her own living room and often ended up running outside to catch a breath. When another week went by like this, one of her close colleagues visited her. "Suzanne, is everything okay? Everyone's been talking about you. What's wrong?" "I don't know, Dean. I've been experiencing extreme claustrophobia. Sometimes I feel like my heart will implode. I feel like I'm trapped in here, and I'm never gonna get out. Yet I'm laying on my own bed at night." "That's strange. I was speaking to an elderly client the other day. He spent nearly 15 years behind bars. He's a changed man now, but he was telling me something similar. That he experiences claustrophobia? Not that he experiences it now, but he did when he was in jail. People who have been incarcerated at some point experience it when they're confined there for years after years." Later that evening, Dean's words began to run through Susan's head. She started to ponder if this was like a curse. Had anyone innocent been penalized because of her? Was what she was experiencing some sort of repercussion? For the next 3 days, all Susan did was look through her previous records, cases that she had lost, the penalties her clients had suffered because of her failure to prove them innocent. That's when she suddenly stopped at the case of Lucas Stanley. It was 8 years ago. When Susan first got hired in the field, she began her career as a public defender. She was one of the lawyers that would be provided by the government to those who weren't able to afford one. At the time, neither she nor any of her fellow lawyers quite gave priority to these clients. The fact of the matter was that there wasn't much benefit for the lawyer whether they win or lose the case. Their pay would still be the same. As Susan was working as a public defender, she was assigned to defend the case of a young man named Lucas Stanley. He was only 22 years old and was charged with murder of a young woman belonging to his college. When Susan looked into the case, she found 3 other men were involved. They all belonged to the same fraternity. Mr. Stanley, however, demanded he was innocent, but all evidence went against him when his belongings were found in the crime scene. Susan knew the case probably wasn't going to work out in her client's favor. Nonetheless, a week before the trial, an old woman came to Suzanne. It was the grandmother of Lucas Stanley. "Dear, I know my grandson is innocent. He's not the kind of person to take a life. My son and my daughter-in-law passed away in an accident when he was just a babe. He was left in my hands and I raised him as an old woman. I know he has a good heart. He's been framed. Miss, I'm trying to look into the case, but the opposition has heavy charges against your grandson. Dear, you're the only hope I have. Lucas is my only family. Please, child, don't take my family away from me. Take this. It's all I have, but I'll give it to you. Please, save my grandson." At that point, Suzanne wasn't in a good financial state. She accepted the woman's money. But eventually, when the case became difficult, she didn't bother, and Lucas Stanley was indicted and proven guilty. "I requested you so much. I gave you all I had, but what you did wasn't right. You didn't even try. Please, this is not a place to create drama. Tears are worthless here. What do you expect me to do? Your grandson is a criminal. You should thank me for what I've done. I've saved him from getting a life sentence. He got away with only 25 years. The next day, Suzanne got information of Lucas Stanley. She found out he was still serving his sentence. His grandmother, however, had passed away a year ago. Had this worked like a curse for how disingenuous Suzanne had been towards her and her grandson? Perhaps it was time Suzanne set things right. And so, she visited Lucas Stanley and offered to file an appeal for his case. She spent days and nights looking into the case she had once overlooked. Shocked by the numerous inconsistencies that now she could catch in seconds. Lucas Stanley had a very strong alibi during the time of the murder. It was impossible for him to commit the crime. However, it was months before the court approved of the appeal. But when the day came, Suzanne fought the case like she had no other. Not only did she prove her client innocent, but Lucas Stanley was compensated a huge sum for every year he had spent behind bars. Thank you. No, it was my duty, and this was long overdue. At the age of 30, Lucas Stanley was able to start over again, and so was Suzanne. When she sat down that night after the exhausting trial, she finally felt like she could breathe. She picked up the showpiece that a client had once gifted her. People depended on her. People looked up to her for her work. Jacob, my time has come, and before I die, I have one last wish I want you to fulfill. Sure, Mrs. Stanley. This is a gift for someone I knew. There is an address on it. After I die, please give it to her. After her grandson was wrongfully convicted and incarcerated, Anne Stanley couldn't bear the grief. Living alone, she fell sick and was shifted to an old age home. She spent her last years in rage, blaming and remembering the last words of Suzanne Johnson. You should thank me for what I've done. So she did exactly that. She got a gift for her, but not just any gift. Once Anne would die, her spirit would imprint on that item, and in the possession of Suzanne, she would remind her of the injustice she had done, the pain she had caused to an innocent individual. Unfortunately, the caretaker Anne had trusted the gift with had forgotten about it after her death. Until a year later, when he stumbled upon it again, he felt awfully remorseful not having fulfilled someone's last wishes, and immediately delivered it to the address. But it wasn't just this one year that justice had been delayed. It had been many. Perhaps now with amends made, a new beginning awaits. You don't deserve this position of honor. This was the last case, Suzanne. You're leaving this profession forever. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.